El vicepresidente estadounidense J.D. Vance ha sugerido este viernes desde la base espacial Pitufik en Groenlandia que Estados Unidos negociará la adhesión del territorio una vez independiente de Dinamarca a través de un referéndum de autodeterminación.
Our message is very simple. Yes, the people of Greenland are going to have self-determination. We hope that they choose to partner with the United States because we're the only nation on Earth that will respect their sovereignty and respect their security.
Vance ha asegurado ante las tropas estadounidenses que Dinamarca ha fallado en su cometido de proteger a Groenlandia.
There was a lot of criticism from Denmark, a lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me, at others in our administration for saying the obvious, which is that Denmark hasn't done a good job at keeping Greenland safe.
En ese sentido, ha indicado que reconocer que han existido importantes alianzas de seguridad en el pasado no implica que no se puedan tener desacuerdos con los aliados. Preguntado por las aspiraciones del presidente estadounidense Donald Trump de anexionarse Groenlandia por la fuerza, Vance ha resaltado que el magnate ha sido claro en que Estados Unidos respeta la autodeterminación del pueblo de Groenlandia. Así, Vance ha reiterado que los aliados no han seguido el ritmo ante los intereses crecientes de China y Rusia en la región.
Our message is very simple. Yes, the people of Greenland are going to have self-determination. We hope that they choose to partner with the United States because we're the only nation on Earth that will respect their sovereignty and respect their security, because their security is very much our security, as these brave Americans show. Let me just say one more final word to the Guardians, the Airmen, the other service members gathered here. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, it is incredible to be a vice president who has served just as our NSA, Mike Waltz, has served, to know the sacrifice that comes along with it, and to see that there are still incredible young Americans willing to put on the uniform and serve this country. You make America a better place, and you make an honor to serve as your vice president. God bless you guys. Thanks for having me. I want to bring a message for President Trump. He's grateful for your service, grateful for what you do up here, and just wanted me to tell you that he's proud of you and he thinks about you. And of course, the same is true for everybody that's flanking me up here. We're thrilled to be here because the mission that you guys do is so important for the United States. It's important for our national security. And today, everybody that I met, to a person, was professional, was kind, was knowledgeable, and was dedicated to our country. You're a great credit to the United States of America, even though you are very, very far from home. We've talked, of course, in the American media about Signalgate, as I called it, for the past week. And here's what I told the president and the entire national security team, is that, yes, it is in the interest of the United States of America to preserve navigation. Yes, it is in the interest of the United States to kill terrorists who are preventing navigation in the Red Sea, but we got to make sure that we do it right. We have to be careful. We have to make sure the timing is right. And of course, what that leak revealed, I think, is a private communication between the president's senior advisors about how best to prepare the American people for what we all thought we had to do, about the right timing of when we should do something, and of course, surfacing the strategic questions that we needed to decide and brief the president on so that he could ultimately make the decision about what we would do. What I saw in that Signal chat, and of course what I've seen in the president's senior national security team, is that sometimes we all agree and sometimes we all disagree, but it's important that we all have an honest conversation amongst ourselves and with the president of the United States about what we think is the best interest of the national security of the United States of America. I support the president's decision to strike the Houthis. I always supported the president's decision to strike the Houthis, and I support the national security team having the argument about how best to serve the American people. Now, President Trump, as he says all the time, and as a lot of people recognize, is a president of peace. We want to have good relationships with everybody. That includes, even to the extent possible, the Chinese and the Russians. But part of having good relations is showing your strength when you have to. And unfortunately, the story of Greenland over the past 20 years when it comes to security is that we've underinvested in the infrastructure, we've underinvested in the security architecture, and we've underinvested in the brave men and women who are doing a very hard job, as Mike said, to keep all of us safe. That has to change. Now, When I pointed out a couple of weeks ago that in some ways, with all due respect to our Danish allies, they had not kept pace, there was a lot of criticism from Denmark, a lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me, at others in our administration for saying the obvious, which is that Denmark hasn't done a good job at keeping Greenland safe. And one of the things I heard was, well, what about the many Danes who lost their lives in the war on terror fighting alongside the United States? Well, look, we obviously honor the sacrifice of our Danish friends in the war on terror 20 years ago, just as, for example, the French honor the sacrifice of Americans in Normandy 80 years ago. But recognizing that there are important security partnerships in the past does not mean that we can't have disagreements with allies in the present about how to preserve our shared security for the future. And that's what this is about. There is no amount of bullying, no amount of obfuscating, no amount of confusing the issue. Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security architecture of this incredible, beautiful landmass filled with incredible people. That has to change. And because it hasn't changed, this is why President Trump's policy in Greenland is what it is. I find the American media's obsession with this issue very, very interesting, because I happen to remember about 4 years ago when American military leadership made a catastrophic error that got 13 innocent Americans killed in Afghanistan and had about $80 billion of military equipment turned over to one of the worst terrorist organizations in the world. And for years, the American media ran cover for a Biden administration that refused to fire any generals or even launch an internal investigation that was meaningful and substantive about what happened. And now the same American media that covered for the Biden administration after the untimely death and the unnecessary death of 13 brave Americans is really, really interested in forcing the President of the United States to fire someone because of a signal chat. That is not honest behavior from the American media. And if you think you're going to force the President of the United States to fire anybody, you've got another thing coming. President Trump has said it on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, and I'm the Vice President saying it here on Friday. We are standing behind our entire national security team. I think a lot of Americans wonder, why does Greenland matter so much? Why does the mission of this base matter so much to the American people? And I learned a lot about that today myself. Of course, you can read about it in a book, but I saw it up close and personal. And if, God forbid, to my fellow Americans, if a missile was fired from an enemy country or an enemy submarine into the United States, it is the people here before us who would give notice to our brave men and women further south in the United States to let people know what was coming and, God willing, to try to shoot it down and prepare for it. That's one of the things that we do at installations like this. We know that Russia and China and other nations are taking an extraordinary interest in Arctic passageways and Arctic naval routes, and indeed in the minerals of the Arctic territories. We need to ensure that America is leading in the Arctic, because we know that if America doesn't, other nations will fill the gap where we fall behind. So what you guys do is so critically important. I think a lot of Americans, certainly I, didn't realize it fully until President Trump started talking about the importance of our Arctic mission, about building upon it and ensuring that America can lead in the Arctic for the next generation. There has been an expansion of the security footprint and the security interest of Russia and China. They're doing what they believe is in their interest. The United States must do what I know is in our interest, which is to make sure that Greenland is safe. If Greenland doesn't have self-determination, if the people of Greenland have their future controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, it's not going to make their lives better off, and most importantly, it's going to make American and world national security, world security, much, much weaker. We in some ways need to wake up. We need to wake up from a failed 40-year consensus that said that we could ignore the encroachment of powerful countries as they expand their ambitions. We can't just bury our head in the sand, or in Greenland, bury our head in the snow and pretend that the Chinese are not interested in this very large landmass. We know that they are. They've taken steps to put Greenland in ridiculous debt traps to invest and exploit the resources here. And we know that they're sending a lot of military resources here. Yes, over the medium term, the United States will meet that challenge. We will put our own resources here. We already have a lot of great resources here, but we know we're going to have to do more to counter some of the nations that we know that we're competitive with.